They say love is blind, but sometimes it's just willfully ignorant. When Charlotte stood in that courtroom, 8 months pregnant and swollen with exhaustion, she didn't expect mercy. She expected to lose everything to the woman smirking across the aisle, a 22-year-old waitress named Lexi who was currently wearing Charlotte's diamond earrings. Lexi thought she had won. She thought she had secured the millionaire husband, the mansion, and the lifestyle, mocking Charlotte's baby bump for the entire court to see. But arrogance has a way of blinding people to the fine print. Lexi and the cheating husband didn't realize that Judge Harrison Cole had done his homework. And when the judge leaned forward and asked Lexi just one simple question about a date on a receipt, the smirk didn't just fade, it shattered their entire defense. This is the story of how a mistress celebrated too early, and how a pregnant wife walked away with the last laugh. The silence in the house was usually comforting to Charlotte Bennett, but tonight it felt heavy, like the humidity before a thunderstorm. The grandfather clock in the hallway, a wedding gift from her late father, ticked past 8:30 p.m. Charlotte adjusted her position on the velvet armchair, wincing as a sharp kick radiated from her ribs. She was 32 weeks pregnant, and her ankles had swollen to the size of grapefruits. On the dining table, the lasagna she had spent 2 hours assembling, layering the bechamel sauce and homemade bolognese just the way Derek liked it, sat cold and congealed in the center. Derek Bennett, a man who had built a reputation in the city for his ruthless real estate acquisitions and charming smile, was late. Again. "He's just working," Charlotte whispered to the empty room, rubbing her belly. "Daddy is working hard for us, little bean." But the excuse tasted like ash in her mouth. For the past 6 months, Derek had been working, later and later. He had become distant, his eyes always glued to his phone, his temper short. The man who used to rub her feet and read poetry to her belly had been replaced by a stranger who flinched when she tried to hug him. At 9:15 p.m., the front door finally clicked open. Charlotte didn't get up immediately. She listened to the heavy footsteps on the hardwood. Derek didn't call out, "Honey, I'm home," like he used to. He walked straight into the dining room, loosening his silk tie, his face a mask of irritation. "You're still up?" he asked, not making eye contact. He walked past her to the liquor cabinet and poured himself a generous glass of scotch. "I made dinner," Charlotte said softly, gesturing to the cold lasagna. "I thought we could eat together. We haven't had a meal together in weeks." Derek. Derek took a swig of the amber liquid and turned to face her. For the first time, Charlotte noticed something different about him. Usually he looked tired. Tonight he looked energized, buzzing with a nervous, frantic energy. And there was something else. A scent. It wasn't the oak and leather cologne she bought him. It was floral. Cheap, sugary, vanilla perfume that clung to his expensive suit jacket. "I ate already," Derek said, setting the glass down with a clatter. "Look, Charlotte, we need to talk. I can't do this anymore." Charlotte felt a cold pit open in her stomach. "Do what? Eat dinner?" "This." Derek gestured vaguely at her, at the house, at the life they had built over 7 years. "The charade. I'm suffocating here, Charlotte. I'm 38 years old, and I feel like my life is over. You've changed." "I'm pregnant, Derek," she said, her voice trembling. "Of course I've changed. I'm carrying our son." "It's not just the pregnancy," he snapped, his face flushing red. "It's everything. You're boring, Charlotte. You just want to sit here and talk about nurseries and colors and domestic things. I need life. I need excitement. I need someone who understands the pressure I'm under." "And I suppose you found someone who understands?" Charlotte asked, the realization hitting her like a physical blow. the vanilla perfume, the late nights. Derek didn't deny it. He straightened his back, a look of arrogant defiance crossing his features. Her name is Lexi. And yes, she understands me in a way you never could. Lexi. Charlotte repeated the name. It sounded foreign, sharp. She works at the Rusty Spoon, Derek said, as if that were a point of pride. The Rusty Spoon was a roadside diner near Derek's newest construction site. She's 22. She's alive, Charlotte. She doesn't nag me about mortgages or doctor appointments. She makes me feel like a king. Charlotte struggled to stand up, her hands gripping the armrests. You're leaving me? For a 22-year-old waitress? Derek, I am 8 months pregnant with your child. How can you be so selfish? Derek scoffed, walking over to the dining table. He looked at the cold lasagna with disgust. Don't play the victim. I've already spoken to my lawyer, Mr. Henderson. I'm filing for divorce tomorrow, and Charlotte, I want you out of the house by the weekend. Charlotte froze. This is my house, Derek. My father helped us buy this land. The deed is in my name, Charlotte, Derek sneered, leaning in close. Everything is in my name. The accounts, the cars, the house. You never worked a day in the last 5 years. You're a dependent. And honestly, I don't think I can stand looking at you waddle around here anymore. It's depressing. He pulled out his phone and typed a quick message. A moment later, he looked up with a cruel grin. Lexi is outside. I'm going to stay with her tonight. Have your things packed by Saturday. He turned on his heel and walked out the door, leaving Charlotte standing alone in the dim light, the smell of his scotch and the phantom scent of cheap vanilla hanging in the air. She didn't cry. Not yet. She was too paralyzed by the sheer brutality of it. The next morning, the reality of the situation set in with the rising sun. Charlotte hadn't slept. She had spent the night in the nursery, sitting in the rocking chair, staring at the empty crib. She expected Derek to come back, to apologize, to say it was a midlife crisis induced by stress. But at 10 a.m., a black SUV pulled into the driveway. It wasn't Derek's car. Charlotte watched from the window as the driver's door opened. Derek stepped out, looking fresh and showered. But then the passenger door opened. Out stepped a young woman with bleach-blonde hair, tied in a high ponytail, wearing a neon pink crop top and ripped denim jeans that looked painted on. She was chewing gum aggressively. This was Lexi Summers. Charlotte felt a wave of nausea that had nothing to do with morning sickness. She walked to the front door, her protective instinct flaring up. She opened it just as they reached the porch. "What are you doing here, Derek?" Charlotte asked, her voice steady despite the trembling of her hands. "I need my golf clubs," Derek muttered, refusing to look her in the eye. Lexi, however, had no trouble looking at Charlotte. Her eyes, lined with heavy black makeup, raked over Charlotte's body, lingering on her swollen stomach with a look of pure disdain. "So this is her?" Lexi asked, popping a bubble of gum. Her voice was high-pitched and nasal. "She looks bigger than you said." "Lexi, wait in the car," Derek said, sounding slightly embarrassed. "No way, baby," Lexi said, pushing past Derek and stepping into the foyer. She looked around the grand entrance hall with hungry eyes. "Wow. High ceilings. I like it. We're definitely getting rid of that ugly chandelier, though. It looks like something a grandma would own." Charlotte stepped in front of her. "Get out of my house." Lexi laughed. It was a dry, mocking sound. "Your house? Derek told me everything, sweetie. You're broke. You're just a housewife who got too comfortable spending his money. And now?" She pointed a manicured finger at Charlotte's stomach. "Now you're just baggage." "Derek, get her out of here," Charlotte commanded, looking at her husband. But Derek just shrugged, The presence of Lexi seemed to strip him of his decency. He wanted to impress her. She has a right to see it, Charlotte. She's going to be living here soon. Living here? Charlotte gasped. Once the divorce is finalized, Lexi smirked, walking over to the hallway mirror and checking her lipstick. Derek said this place is too big for just one person. We're going to turn the nursery into a gym. I mean, who needs a baby room when you have a body like mine to maintain, right? The cruelty was so specific, so targeted, that Charlotte felt the breath leave her lungs. You want to turn my son's nursery into a gym? Well, you're taking the kid, aren't you? Lexi said, turning around. Derek doesn't want to deal with diapers. He's in his prime. He wants to travel, go to Cabo, live a little. You're the one who trapped him with a baby. I didn't trap anyone, Charlotte said, her voice rising. We were married for 7 years. We planned this child. Plans change, Lexi said dismissively. She walked over to where Charlotte's purse was sitting on the entry table. She picked it up, rifling through it. Hey! Charlotte lunged forward, but her heavy belly made her slow. Lexi pulled out Charlotte's car keys. Derek, is this for the Mercedes? Yeah, Derek said, coming back down the stairs with his golf bag. I want to drive it, Lexi said, jingling the keys. My Honda is making that weird noise again. Let me take the Mercedes. That's my car, Charlotte said, tears finally stinging her eyes. The car seat is installed in it. I have a doctor's appointment tomorrow. Derek paused, looking at his wife, then at the young, expectant face of his mistress. Give her the keys, Charlotte. I'll call you an Uber for your appointment. Lexi needs a reliable car. You cannot be serious, Charlotte whispered. Derek, I am your wife. Not for long, Lexi interjected, snatching the keys from the air as Derek nodded his approval. Come on, baby, let's get out of here. It smells like old milk and desperation in here. Lexi strutted out the door, twirling the keys to Charlotte's car. Derek followed, pausing only briefly at the threshold. Saturday, Charlotte, he said coldly. I want you out. If you're not gone, I'll have the sheriff remove you. As the heavy oak door slammed shut, Charlotte collapsed onto the bottom step of the staircase. She listened as the engine of her Mercedes roared to life, the car she had bought to bring her baby home in, and watched through the window as Lexi peeled out of the driveway, laughing, with Derek in the passenger seat. They thought she was weak. They thought she was just a dependent housewife. They thought the money, the house, and the power belonged solely to Derek because his name was on the company letterhead. Charlotte wiped the tears from her face. Her sadness was rapidly calcifying into something harder, colder. Rage. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. She didn't call her mother. She didn't call a friend to cry. She dialed a number she hadn't used in 5 years. Law offices of Gallagher and Stein, a crisp voice answered. I need to speak to senior partner Michael Stein, Charlotte said, her voice dropping an octave. Tell him it's Charlotte Vanderbilt. The packing process was agonizingly slow, not just because of Charlotte's physical condition, but because every object held a memory that now felt like a lie. She folded the cashmere throw blanket they had bought in Vermont on their first anniversary. She boxed up the crystal vase Derek had given her after his first big promotion. She didn't pack everything. She left the expensive jewelry Derek had bought her over the years, the apology diamonds, as she now mentally referred to them. She left the designer handbags he insisted she carry to make him look good at company galas. She took only what she had paid for herself, her clothes, her books, and the items for the baby. It was Saturday morning. The deadline. Derek sat in the living room, watching football on the massive flat-screen TV, deliberately ignoring the sound of taping boxes. He was making a point. This was his castle. She was just the evicted tenant. "Are you done yet?" Derek called out without turning his head. "Lexi wants to come over and start measuring for new drapes. She hates that beige color you picked." Charlotte walked down the stairs, a small suitcase in one hand, her other hand supporting her lower back. She looked at the man she had vowed to love forever. He looked strangers to her now. "I'm leaving Derek," Charlotte said quietly. He finally turned, a smirk playing on his lips. "Good. I left a check on the counter for $2,000. That should cover a motel and some food for a few weeks. After that, well, you'll have to figure it out. Maybe get a job. Oh, wait. Nobody hires women who are about to pop, do they?" He laughed at his own cruelty. Charlotte didn't look at the check. She didn't scream. She simply placed her house key on the side table. "I won't be needing your money, Derek. I hope you enjoy the house. Truly." Derek frowned, confused by her lack of hysterics. He expected begging. He expected a scene he could tell Lexi about later to make them both laugh. Instead, Charlotte walked out the front door with a dignity that unsettled him. Outside, a black town car was waiting. Not a taxi, a Lincoln Continental with tinted windows. Derek went to the window, pulling back the curtain. "Who the hell is picking her up?" he muttered. He watched as a uniformed driver stepped out, took Charlotte's suitcase, and opened the rear door for her with a bow of respect. "Must be one of her charity friends," Derek scoffed, returning to his game. "She's probably crashing on someone's couch." 30 minutes later, the town car glided to a halt in front of a glass skyscraper in the financial district. The sign on the building read, "Vanderbilt Enterprises." Charlotte took the elevator to the top floor, the 50th floor, reserved for executive partners. The receptionist, a stern woman named Mrs. Higgins, who had worked there for 40 years, stood up immediately. "Miss Charlotte," Mrs. Higgins said, her eyes softening, "it has been too long. Your father would be, well, he would be worried seeing you like this." "I'm fine, Mrs. Higgins," Charlotte said, though her face was pale. "Is Mr. Stein ready?" "He is waiting in the boardroom." Michael Stein was a legend in the legal world. He was 70 years old, wore three-piece suits, and had a reputation for destroying opponents so thoroughly they thanked him for it afterwards, just to make the pain stop. He had been the personal attorney for Charlotte's father, the late industrialist William Vanderbilt. When Charlotte walked in, Michael stood up and rounded the massive oak table to help her into a chair. "Charlotte," Michael said, his voice gravelly and serious. "I received your call. I've already run the preliminary checks on Derek Bennett." "He kicked me out, Michael," Charlotte said, her voice finally breaking. "He's with a 22-year-old waitress. He told me I was boring. He told me I was a dependent." Michael's eyes narrowed behind his wire-rimmed glasses. "A dependent? That is rich. Does he still not know?" "No." Charlotte shook her head. "When I met Derek, I was trying to escape the Vanderbilt name. I wanted to be sure someone loved me for me, not for the inheritance. I told him my parents were dead and left me a small insurance policy. I never told him about the trust fund. I never told him about the real estate portfolio. And the seed money for his company?" Michael asked, opening a thick file folder. "He thinks he got that angel investor loan from a private equity firm in Zurich," Charlotte explained. "He doesn't know that the firm is a shell company solely owned by me. I funded his entire career, Michael. I bought the land his office sits on. I approved the loans for the house he just kicked me out of." Michael leaned back, a shark-like grin spreading across his face. "So, let me get this straight. Mr. Bennett believes he is a self-made millionaire, divorcing a penniless housewife. In reality, he is heavily in debt to a company owned by his wife, living in a house collateralized by his wife, and driving cars leased through his wife's holding company. Yes, Charlotte whispered. I wanted to help him build his dream. I wanted to be his silent partner. Well, Michael slammed the folder shut. It's time to stop being silent. He wants a divorce? We'll give him one. But first, we are going to let him dig his own grave. He has a lawyer, Charlotte said. A Mr. Henderson. Michael chuckled dryly. Henderson? He's a strip mall ambulance chaser. Charlotte, listen to me. We aren't going to reveal your assets yet. Not until we are in court. We are going to let Derek and this Lexi perjure themselves. We need them to claim on public record that you are destitute and that he is the sole provider. We need to capture his arrogance on the transcript. Why? Because, Michael said, when the judge realizes Derek has been lying about his assets and yours, he won't just lose the divorce case. He'll lose his credibility. And in this town, credibility is the only currency that matters. 3 weeks passed. Charlotte stayed in her family's estate on the outskirts of the city, a sprawling manor hidden behind high iron gates. She spent her days resting, preparing for the baby, and reviewing documents with Michael Stein. Meanwhile, Derek and Lexi were living the high life. Without Charlotte nagging him about savings and operational costs, Derek began to hemorrhage money. He bought Lexi a convertible. He took her on weekend trips to casinos. Lexi, feeling the power of being the future Mrs. Bennet, began to assert herself in Derek's social circles. The humiliation began on a Tuesday afternoon. Charlotte had ventured out to Petals and Lace, an upscale boutique, to buy a coming-home outfit for the baby. She was browsing the soft cotton onesies when she heard the distinct, shrill laugh that haunted her nightmares. Oh my God, look at this one. It's Gucci. Lexi's voice pierced the quiet store. Charlotte froze, her hand hovering over a blue knit cap. She tried to turn away, to retreat to the back of the store, but it was too late. Well, 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 Lexi announced, her heels clicking loudly on the marble floor. Look who crawled out of the motel. Charlotte turned. Lexi was wearing a white fur coat, despite it being 50 degrees outside. She was clinging to Derek's arm. Derek looked tired, dark circles under his eyes, but he straightened up when he saw Charlotte. Charlotte, Derek said, his tone clipped. What are you doing here? This place is expensive. You shouldn't be spending your alimony check before you even get it. I'm buying clothes for your son, Derek, Charlotte said calmly. Lexi stepped forward, invading Charlotte's personal space. She picked up the onesie Charlotte had been looking at. $30? For a baby that's just going to puke on it? You really are bad with money, aren't you? No wonder Derek was drowning with you. Lexi, put it down, Charlotte said. Or what? Lexi sneered. You're going to call the manager. Oh, wait. We are the VIP customers here now. Derek just bought me a $2,000 diaper bag. Can you believe it? A bag for my stuff, not a brat's. She leaned in close, whispering so only Charlotte could hear. You know, Derek told me you look like a whale. He says he's embarrassed to be seen with you. Why don't you just do us all a favor and move to another state? Nobody wants you here. Charlotte felt the heat rise in her cheeks, but she remembered Michael Stein's advice. Let them dig their grave. Is that all? Charlotte asked. Come on, Lexi, Derek said, looking around nervously as other shoppers began to stare. Let's go. No, I want to see how she pays. Lexi laughed. Does she have food stamps? Charlotte walked to the counter. The sales clerk, a young woman who looked terrified of the confrontation, rang up the items. That'll be $120.50, ma'am. Charlotte opened her purse. She didn't pull out cash. She didn't pull out a debit card. She pulled out a sleek, heavy card made of black anodized titanium. The Centurion card. The black card. She handed it to the clerk. Derek, who was standing a few feet away, caught a glimpse of the black metal. He frowned. He knew about those cards. They were invitation only. You had to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars a year just to qualify. How did Charlotte have one? But before he could process it, Lexi yanked on his arm. "Derek, look at these shoes. Buy them for me." Distracted, Derek dismissed the thought. It must be a fake, he told himself. A prop card. She's trying to look rich. Charlotte signed the receipt, took her bag, and walked past them. As she passed Derek, she paused. "You look tired, Derek," she said softly. "Make sure you're reading the fine print on those contracts you're signing." She left them standing there. Lexi rolled her eyes. "What a loser. Did you hear her? Trying to give you business advice. She probably doesn't even know what a contract is." Derek nodded, but a seed of unease had been planted in his gut. The escalation continued. A week later, Derek's lawyer, the slimy Mr. Henderson, filed an emergency motion. Michael Stein called Charlotte to his office. His face was grim. "They're playing dirty, Charlotte," Michael said. "What did they do?" "Henderson filed a motion claiming you are mentally unstable," Michael said, sliding a document across the desk. "They claim your obsession with the pregnancy has made you unfit. They are asking for full custody of the child once he is born." Charlotte felt the blood drain from her face. "Full custody? Derek doesn't even want the baby. He called our son baggage." "It's not about the baby," Michael explained. "It's about money. If Derek gets full custody, he doesn't have to pay you child support. In fact, he could sue you for support if we reveal your wealth later. And—" Michael paused. Lexi gave a statement. "What did she say?" "She claims you threatened her. She claims you came to the house and vandalized her car. They have photos of scratches on her Honda." "I haven't been near that house," Charlotte cried. "I've been at the estate. The security cameras can prove it." "Exactly," Michael smiled, though his eyes remained cold. "They are fabricating evidence. This is a felony, Charlotte. They are so desperate to win, so desperate to humiliate you, that they are breaking the law." "So we show the judge the tapes?" Charlotte asked. "Not yet," Michael said. "We wait for the deposition. We let them swear under oath that you did it. Once they lie on the record, we have them. But you have to be strong, Charlotte. The deposition is going to be brutal. They are going to attack you. They are going to mock you, and you cannot react. Can you do that?" Charlotte placed a hand on her stomach. She felt the baby kick, a strong, rhythmic thump against her palm. She thought of Lexi's sneer in the baby store. She thought of Derek's cold indifference. "I can do it," Charlotte said, her eyes hardening. "I'll let them say whatever they want, and then I'll watch them burn." The date of the deposition was set. It was the last hurdle before the trial, and it was there, in a sterile conference room, that Lexi would make the mistake that would cost her everything, all over a simple receipt for lasagna ingredients. The conference room at Henderson's law firm was designed to intimidate. The walls were lined with leather-bound books that had likely never been opened, and the air conditioner was cranked down to a freezing temperature, a common tactic to make the opposing party uncomfortable. Charlotte sat on one side of the mahogany table, her hands resting protectively on her belly. She wore a simple grey maternity dress and a cardigan. She looked tired, which was exactly how Michael Stein wanted her to look. Opposite her sat Derek and Lexi. Derek was tapping furiously on his phone, while Lexi was loudly chewing gum, looking bored. She wore a bright red dress that was far too short for a legal proceeding, and was currently examining her cuticles as if the destruction of a marriage was a minor inconvenience to her manicure schedule. A court reporter sat at the head of the table, fingers hovering over a stenotype machine. "Let the record show," Mr. Henderson began, his voice oily and patronizing, "that we are here for the deposition of Mrs. Charlotte Bennet regarding the divorce proceedings and custody petition." Henderson turned his predatory gaze toward Charlotte. "Mrs. Bennet, would you agree that in the months leading up to the separation, you became emotionally volatile?" "I was pregnant," Charlotte said softly. "Hormones are a part of—" "Yes or no, Mrs. Bennet," Henderson interrupted. "Did you, on the night of October 15th, throw a plate of lasagna at my client?" Charlotte blinked. "What?" "No, I made dinner. It sat on the table. Derek never ate it." "Objection," Michael Stein said, lazily, not even looking up from his notes. "Badgering." "My client states you threw it," Henderson smirked, glancing at Derek. Derek finally looked up, meeting Charlotte's eyes with a look of pure malice. He gave a slight nod, confirming the lie. "I did not," Charlotte maintained. "And is it true," Henderson continued, "that you threatened Miss Summers here? That you told her you would make her pay if she didn't leave your husband alone?" "I told her to get out of my house," Charlotte said. "So you admit to being aggressive?" "I admit to defending my home from an intruder," Charlotte replied, her voice gaining a steely edge. Lexi scoffed loudly. "Intruder? Please, I was an invited guest. Derek invited me. You were the one screaming like a banshee." "Miss Summers," Michael Stein said, his voice cutting through the room like a razor, "you are not being deposed yet. Please remain silent." Lexi rolled her eyes. "Whatever, Grandpa." Michael Stein ignored the insult. He waited patiently for Henderson to finish his bullying line of questioning. Henderson painted Charlotte as a lazy, hysterical, financially incompetent burden who had driven a successful businessman into the arms of a younger, more supportive woman. Finally, it was Michael's turn to question Derek. Michael adjusted his glasses. "Mr. Bennet, you claim that your relationship with Miss Summers began after you initiated divorce proceedings with my client. Is that correct?" Derek straightened his tie. "Absolutely. I'm a man of honor. Lexi and I were just colleagues before that." "Colleagues?" Michael raised an eyebrow. "Miss Summers is a waitress at the Rusty Spoon. You are a real estate developer. What professional overlap do you have?" "She consulted," Derek stammered slightly, "on local demographics for the diner crowd, market research." Lexi giggled. "Yeah, market research." "I see," Michael said, scribbling something down. "So, strictly professional until the night you asked Charlotte for a divorce?" "Yes," Derek lied under oath. "And you, Miss Summers?" Michael turned his gaze to Lexi. "You confirm this timeline? You never spent the night with Mr. Bennet prior to November?" "Nope," Lexi popped her gum. "I have morals, you know." Michael paused. He pulled a piece of paper from his folder. It was a photocopy of a receipt. "Mr. Bennet, I have here a receipt from the Sapphire Lounge at the Plaza Hotel, dated September 12th, 2 months before you left your wife. The bill includes a bottle of Dom Perignon and chocolate-covered strawberries. The bill was signed by you." Derek paled slightly. "I have business meetings there all the time." "With Miss Summers?" Michael asked. "No, with investors," Derek insisted. "Strange," Michael murmured, "because the receipt lists the number of guests as 2, and we subpoenaed the security footage from the hotel lobby for that night." Derek froze. Lexi stopped chewing her gum. "However," Michael said, closing the folder abruptly, "we don't need to view that right now. I just wanted to give you a chance to refresh your memory." He didn't show the footage. He didn't press further. He let the fear hang in the air. It was a classic trap. If they changed their story now, they admitted to lying earlier. If they stuck to the lie, and Michael produced the tape in court, they were done. But Derek, in his arrogance, convinced himself Michael was bluffing. He doesn't have the tape, Derek thought. The plaza deletes footage after 30 days. He's fishing. I stick by my statement, Derek said, regaining his composure. It was a business meeting. I don't recall who it was with. Maybe a potential client. Very well, Michael said, a small, dangerous smile touching his lips. No further questions. As they packed up to leave, Lexi leaned over to Charlotte as they passed in the doorway. Nice try with the receipt, Fatty, Lexi whispered. But nobody cares if Derek cheated a little bit. He's the one with the money. You're just the ex-wife with a brat on the way. By the time we're done in court, you'll be living in a trailer. Charlotte didn't respond. She just placed a hand on her belly and walked out, knowing that the trap had not just been set, it had been baited, and Derek and Lexi had swallowed it whole. The day of the trial arrived with a grey, drizzling sky, but inside the courtroom of the Honourable Judge Harrison Cole, the air was electric. Judge Cole was known throughout the state as a black-letter judge. He didn't care about emotions. He cared about the law, facts, and the truth. He was a stern man in his 60s with silver hair and eyes that seemed to bore into the soul of anyone who dared to take the stand. Derek and Lexi arrived looking like they were attending a red carpet event. Derek wore a bespoke Italian suit. Lexi wore a tight white dress that looked vaguely bridal, paired with the diamond earrings she had stolen from Charlotte's jewelry box. She sat in the gallery directly behind Derek, smirking at everyone who walked in. Charlotte entered a moment later. She had changed. Gone were the loose, frumpy maternity clothes Derek hated. Today, Charlotte wore a tailored navy blue maternity suit that screamed old money. Her hair was pulled back in an elegant chignon. She wore no jewelry except for a simple string of pearls, real pearls, inherited from her grandmother, worth more than Derek's car. Derek frowned when he saw her. She didn't look broken. She looked formidable. "All rise," the bailiff bellowed. Judge Cole swept into the room, his black robes billowing. He took his seat and adjusted his glasses, looking over the paperwork. "We are here for the matter of Bennett vs. Bennett," the judge said, his voice deep and resonant. "Let's proceed. Opening statements." Mr. Henderson stood up, buttoning his jacket. He strutted to the center of the room. "Your Honor," Henderson began, using his hands expressively. "This is a simple case. My client, Derek Bennett, is a successful, self-made man who has worked tirelessly to provide a life of luxury for his wife. Unfortunately, Mrs. Bennett became complacent. She contributed nothing to the marriage financially. She became emotionally unstable, and when Mr. Bennett sought happiness elsewhere, she became vindictive." Henderson pointed an accusing finger at Charlotte. "We will prove that she is unfit to raise their child. We will prove she has no means to support herself. We are asking for the prenuptial agreement, which grants her nothing in the event of infidelity, though she claims he cheated, to be upheld, and for full custody to be awarded to the father." Judge Cole made a note, his face impassive. "Mr. Stein?" Michael Stein stood up. He didn't strut. He didn't wave his hands. He stood behind his desk, leaning on his knuckles. "Your Honor," Michael said, his voice quiet but carrying to every corner of the room. "The defense will prove only one thing today. That perjury is a crime, and that greed makes people blind." He sat down. The brevity of the statement caused a ripple of murmurs in the courtroom. Derek snickered. That's all he's got, he thought. The morning was consumed by Derek's testimony. Henderson walked him through his finances, or what Derek thought were his finances. Derek bragged about his company, his assets, and his income. He painted himself as the victim of a leeching wife. Then it was Lexi's turn. Mr. Henderson called her to the stand as a character witness to testify to Charlotte's instability. Lexi bounced up to the witness stand, swearing on the Bible with a flippant attitude. "Miss Summers," Henderson asked, "can you tell the court about your interactions with the defendant, Mrs. Bennet?" "Oh, she's crazy," Lexi said, looking directly at the judge. "She came to the house screaming. She keyed my car. She's totally obsessed with me because she knows I'm better for Derek. I mean, look at her." Lexi gestured to Charlotte. She let herself go. "Derek needs a woman who takes care of herself." "And did she threaten you?" "Yes. She said she would destroy us." Lexi lied effortlessly. "She's jealous because Derek bought me a Mercedes and promised to marry me as soon as this is over." "Thank you, Miss Summers," Henderson said, looking satisfied. Judge Cole looked at Lexi over the rim of his glasses. He seemed unimpressed by her demeanor, but he remained silent. "Cross-examination," the judge asked. Michael Stein stood up. He picked up a single piece of paper. It wasn't the receipt from the deposition. It was something else. "Miss Summers," Michael began, walking slowly toward the witness stand. "You stated that Mrs. Bennet keyed your car on November 20th, correct?" "Yep, scratched the whole side up," Lexi said. "And you stated earlier that you and Mr. Bennet were not romantically involved until after he left the marital home on November 1st? "That's right," Lexi said, looking bored. "So, on November 20th, you were visiting Mr. Bennet at the marital home?" "Yes." "And you drove your Honda?" "No," Lexi corrected him, eager to brag. "I was driving the Mercedes Derek gave me. That's the car she keyed. She was jealous of the car." Michael stopped walking. He looked at the jury, though this was a bench trial. He played to the room, then back at Lexi. "The Mercedes," Michael repeated. "The one Mr. Bennet leased?" "Bought," Lexi corrected. "He bought it for me." "I see." Michael turned to the judge. "Your Honor, I would like to submit Exhibit C. It is the lease agreement for the 2024 Mercedes convertible, currently in Miss Summers' possession." He handed the paper to the bailiff. "Miss Summers," Michael continued, "do you know whose name is on this lease?" "Derek's," she scoffed. "Actually," Michael said, "it's not. The car is leased under Bennett Holdings LLC. "So, that's Derek's company," Lexi said. "Is it?" Michael turned to Derek, who was suddenly shifting in his seat. "Mr. Bennet, who owns the majority shares of Bennett Holdings LLC?" Derek stood up, flushing red. "I am the CIO." "Sit down, Mr. Bennet," Judge Cole barked, slamming his gavel. Michael turned back to Lexi. "You see, Miss Summers, Derek is the CEO, but he doesn't own the company. The company is owned by a private trust, the Vanderbilt Trust." Lexi looked confused. "Vanderbilt? Like the old railroad guys? What does that have to do with anything?" Michael smiled. It was a terrifying smile. "Charlotte's maiden name isn't Bennet, it's Vanderbilt. She is the sole beneficiary of the trust, which means, Miss Summers, that Charlotte owns the company. Charlotte owns the house you are sleeping in, and Charlotte owns the car you are driving." The silence in the courtroom was absolute. You could hear a pin drop. Derek's mouth fell open. He looked at Charlotte, really looked at her, and saw the cold, aristocratic bearing of a woman who came from dynastic wealth. "That's a lie," Lexi stammered. "Derek is rich. He pays for everything." "He pays with a company credit card," Michael corrected, "authorized by his wife. Until this morning. We froze the accounts at 9 a.m. Lexi looked at Derek. Panic flared in her eyes. "Derek, what is he talking about?" But Michael wasn't done. "Your Honor," Michael said, "I have one more question for the witness regarding her credibility." Michael walked back to his table and picked up the receipt, the one from the deposition, but he also picked up a second document. A calendar. "Miss Summers," Michael said, "you testified under oath that you didn't know Mr. Bennett intimately before November. Yet you just bragged about the Mercedes. The lease date on the car is August 14th. Lexi froze. Why would Mr. Bennett's company lease a $60,000 car for a consultant waitress 3 months before the separation? Lexi looked around for help. Henderson was burying his face in his hands. Judge Cole leaned forward. This was the moment. The judge had been reviewing the evidence Michael had just submitted, the lease, the receipts, and the financial breakdown of the shell company. The judge held up the receipt from the Sapphire Lounge. "Miss Summers," Judge Cole said, his voice booming. "I have a question." Lexi looked up, terrified. "Yes, Your Honor?" "This receipt for the dinner at the plaza," Judge Cole said, squinting at the paper. "It is dated September 12th. You claimed you were not with him then. But looking at this itemized bill, there is a charge here for a happy birthday dessert plate." The judge paused, looking at a file on his desk. "I am looking at your driver's license copy, submitted as evidence for your identification," Judge Cole said. "Miss Summers, what is your date of birth?" The color drained from Lexi's face. "September 12th, she whispered. "Speak up," the judge commanded. "September 12th, she cried out. "So," Judge Cole lowered his glasses, his eyes filled with contempt. "Mr. Bennett took you out for a romantic birthday dinner, bought you a Mercedes, and moved you into his wife's house, all while you claim you were just a consultant?" "He told me to say it," Lexi screamed, pointing at Derek. "He told me if I admitted we were sleeping together, the prenup wouldn't work. He said we had to lie to get the money." The courtroom erupted. The silence that followed Lexi's screaming confession was shattered by the rhythmic, thunderous pounding of Judge Cole's gavel. "Order! Order in this court!" Judge Cole bellowed, his face red with righteous anger. Mr. Henderson, Derek's lawyer, looked as though he wanted to dissolve into the floorboards. He began stuffing papers into his briefcase with trembling hands. "Your Honor, I request a recess. I need to counsel my client regarding—" "Request denied," Judge Cole snapped. "Mr. Henderson, your client and his witness have just admitted, on the record, to perjury and conspiracy to defraud the defendant. There will be no recess. There will be judgment. Now." Derek sat slumped in his chair, his face a mask of ash-grey shock. He looked at Lexi, who was now sobbing hysterically on the witness stand, realizing too late that her outburst had sealed their fate. "I didn't mean it," Lexi wailed. "I just wanted to win." "Quiet," the judge commanded. He turned his gaze to Charlotte. She sat calmly, her hands folded over her stomach, looking like a queen watching a jester trip over his own feet. "Mrs. Bennett," Judge Cole said, his voice softening slightly. "Or should I say, Mrs. Vanderbilt. The court apologizes for the waste of your time." He turned back to Derek. "Mr. Bennett, in 30 years on the bench, I have seen many cases of infidelity. I have seen greed. But rarely have I seen such a repugnant display of arrogance. You didn't just cheat on your pregnant wife. You tried to destroy her reputation and steal her child to avoid paying your fair share." Derek stood up, his voice cracking. "Your Honor, please. It was a mistake. I love my wife. Lexi, she manipulated me." "You liar!" Lexi screamed from the stand. "You bought me the car. You said Charlotte was a boring cow." "Enough!" Judge Cole slammed the gavel down one final time. "Here is my ruling." The courtroom went still. First, The petition for full custody filed by Mr. Bennett is dismissed with prejudice. Full physical and legal custody of the unborn child is awarded to the mother, Charlotte Vanderbilt. Mr. Bennett will have no visitation rights until he completes a court-ordered parenting class and a psychological evaluation to be reviewed in 1 year. Charlotte let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. Her baby was safe. Second, the judge continued, regarding the division of assets. Since the prenuptial agreement was predicated on a full financial disclosure, which Mr. Bennett failed to provide, specifically regarding his misuse of company funds, the agreement is null and void. Derek's eyes widened. But the company. Third, the judge said, looking at a document Michael Stein had handed him earlier. Evidence provided by Mr. Stein proves that Bennett Holdings is a wholly owned subsidiary of the Vanderbilt Trust. Mr. Bennett, you do not own the company. You are an employee. Judge Cole looked at Michael Stein. Mr. Stein, as the representative of the owner, do you have a statement? Michael stood up and walked over to Derek. He pulled a crisp white envelope from his jacket pocket and dropped it onto the table in front of Derek. Mr. Bennett, Michael said, his voice echoing in the room, you are hereby terminated from your position as CEO, effective immediately, for cause. The cause being embezzlement of company funds to purchase unauthorized vehicles and luxury items for non-employees. Security is currently clearing out your office. You are also evicted from the company-owned residence, effective immediately. Derek stared at the envelope. Fired? You can't fire me. I built that company. You managed it, Michael corrected, cold as ice, with your wife's money, and you did a poor job. Judge Cole cleared his throat. Finally, regarding the perjury. Bailiff, please take Miss Summers and Mr. Bennett into custody. I am holding them in contempt of court and referring this transcript to the District Attorney's Office for prosecution regarding perjury and attempted fraud. The sound of handcuffs clicking was the sweetest sound Charlotte had ever heard. No, you can't arrest me. I'm pregnant. Lexi lied again, desperate to save herself. We'll have the jail nurse check on that, the bailiff said dryly, hauling her away. As Derek was led out, stripped of his dignity, his suit rumpled, he locked eyes with Charlotte. Charlotte, please, I'm sorry. I'll fix it. Tell them to stop. Charlotte didn't speak. She simply stood up, smoothed her dress, and turned her back on him to shake Michael Stein's hand. An hour later, Charlotte walked out of the courthouse into the fresh air. The drizzle had stopped, and the sun was breaking through the clouds. Because the arrest was for contempt, Derek and Lexi were processed and released on bail pending a future hearing, but the damage was done. They stumbled out of the side exit just as Charlotte was getting into her town car. Derek saw her and ran over, looking manic. Lexi trailed behind him, her mascara running down her face, looking like a tragic clown. "Charlotte!" Derek gasped, grabbing the door handle of the car before the driver could close it. "Charlotte, wait! We need to talk!" "There is nothing to talk about, Derek," Charlotte said, looking at him with pity. "You have nothing I want." "I'm your husband." "Ex-husband," she corrected. "The divorce decree was signed 10 minutes ago." "But the money, the house," Derek stammered. "I have nowhere to go. They took the company car keys. My credit cards are declined. Charlotte, you can't leave me on the street." "You left me with a check for $2,000 and told me to figure it out," Charlotte reminded him. "You told me I was boring. You told me I was baggage. Well, Derek, it seems you have been offloaded." Lexi stepped forward, her arrogance replaced by desperation. "Look, Charlotte, Mrs. Vanderbilt. I didn't know. I didn't know you had the money. If I knew, I never would have—" "You never would have what?" Charlotte cut her off. "Tried to steal my husband?" You only wanted him when you thought he was the king. Now that you see he's just the court jester, you're not so interested, are you?" Lexi looked at Derek with disgust. "He told me he owned everything. He lied to me too." "You deserve each other," Charlotte said. She signaled to her driver. "Thomas, please take me home. I have a nursery to finish." "Wait!" Derek screamed as the window rolled up. "What am I supposed to do?" Through the tinted glass, he saw Charlotte mouth one final word: "Work." The car pulled away, leaving Derek and Lexi standing on the curb. Lexi turned to Derek. "Well? Call an Uber." "I can't," Derek whispered, staring at his deactivated phone. "They cut the line. It was on the company plan." Lexi stared at him for a long second. The man she thought was her ticket to the high life was now a broke, unemployed, middle-aged man facing jail time. "You are pathetic," Lexi spat. She reached into her purse, the expensive one Derek had bought with Charlotte's money, and pulled out her phone. She called a cab for herself. "Where are you going?" Derek asked, panic rising in his voice. "Lexi, baby, we can stay at your apartment." "My apartment is a studio," Lexi said, stepping into the arriving taxi. "And I don't date broke guys. Lose my number, Derek." She slammed the door, leaving Derek Bennett standing alone on the sidewalk, with nothing but the suit on his back and the bitter taste of regret in his mouth. 6 months later. The spring gala for the Vanderbilt Children's Hospital was the event of the season. The ballroom was filled with the city's elite, CEOs, politicians, and celebrities. At the center of it all was Charlotte Vanderbilt. She looked radiant in an emerald green gown, holding a glass of sparkling water. In her other arm, resting against her hip, was a beautiful baby boy with bright blue eyes. "William." "He's getting so big," Michael Stein said, walking up to her with a smile. "He looks just like your father." "He has his spirit, too," Charlotte smiled, kissing the baby's head. "How is the lawsuit handling going?" "Smoothly," Michael said, taking a sip of champagne. "Derek pleaded guilty to the embezzlement charges to avoid jail time. He's currently on probation and working to pay back the restitution." "Working where?" Charlotte asked, though she didn't really care. "He's a shift manager at a burger joint in Jersey," Michael grinned. Apparently it was the only management experience he could verify. "And Lexi?" "She moved back to her parents' house in Ohio. I believe she's working at a salon. She tried to sue Derek for emotional distress, but since he has no money, the case was thrown out." Charlotte looked out over the room. She had her home, her fortune, her dignity, and most importantly, her son. She had feared being a single mother, feared being alone. But she realized now that she had never been the weak one. She had been the pillar holding Derek up, and once she removed herself, he had crumbled. She walked over to the balcony, looking out at the city lights. "They said love is blind," she whispered to little William, who cooed softly in response. "But justice? Justice sees everything." She turned back to the party, ready to celebrate her new life, a life built on truth, strength, and the beautiful silence of a drama-free home. And that is the story of how Charlotte Vanderbilt turned the tables on a cheating husband and his gold-digging mistress. It just goes to show that you should never mistake kindness for weakness, and you should definitely check who actually owns the company before you brag about it in court. Derek and Lexi thought they held all the cards, but they were playing a game Charlotte had already won before it even started. What do you guys think? Did the judge go hard enough on them, or did you want to see them actually go to jail? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story of massive karma and legal justice, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And if you haven't already, Hit subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss a new story. We drop new drama every single day. Thanks for watching, stay safe, and remember, the truth always comes out.